Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's 12:24 p.m. on the 8th of February 2025. Just a little bit frustrated. I've been trying to work out how to get my family sharing that I share with my friend on this laptop to work, and I can't do it. I think I need to have some kind of cord that can go to the laptop and plug into my iPhone to connect it up somehow. I think that's the problem, but this is the wrong fitting. So I'm chasing my tail, going round and round in circles, getting nowhere on my zombie apocalyptic groove that keeps me trapped in incompetence and inability to thrive, people of Earth. So I'm very, very fucking frustrated, but never mind. I'll have to find someone who knows what to do and somehow get the sharing to work from my iPhone onto my laptop, which is what it was intended for anyway. It's weird how I've got this all so messed up and can't get it right. But very frustrating. Very frustrating indeed. Anyway, there's no point in me floundering for the rest of the day in things that I can't change right now. So I don't have the know-how, the knowledge and the technology or the money to get my own, be autonomous and get my own things. I mean, my beautiful friend means well for me, wants me to share hers. So I have all the, the word and the virus protection, blah, blah, blah. But now I pay extra for some kind of protection on my laptop. Quite a lot it cost me, actually, for the year. Don't think that's working either. I think I wasted my money. So anyway, I just sometimes I just want to give up, just want to chuck the thing out the window and give up. But other people manage to exist and, work things out. I'm sure I can. I'm not exactly stupid. Just can't understand why it won't coordinate. Anyway, it'll be something as simple like a cord or potentially having to just be autonomous, pay my own money for everything, and then even then it might not work. That's what I fear. If I go and spend the money, that it still doesn't work. Anyway, it's a beautiful day here at Sacred Space. I didn't go to sleep till 3 in the morning after having my lovely visit with Margaret. Had lots to think about. Another hell loop groove that I'm trapped on. She gave me some very sensible advice. She wants me to write my book, and she also wants me to go, do short courses or even free courses through the university. She said it'll give me a chance to meet other intellectual people who might actually be my tribe. Little does she know that I mixed with a lot of intellectuals in my Jewish community back in the day, and a lot of that was very toxic and bullying also. So now I'm fucking depressed that I don't fit in anywhere. But she's got a point. It wouldn't hurt for me to take up some study and do something that gives a bit more meaning to my life. Brings me into circles where I might meet someone that vibes with me, a potential partner maybe, or even just nice friends that enjoy my company and want to go and do nice things with me and actually be present with me. And it's very good advice. She advised me not to run away and move to a country town. She said I've just escaped from one, and she said wogs like us, she comes from her background is Croatia. She said wogs like us don't fit in small country towns because they're too insulated and isolated, and they don't like the food we eat and the way we think, and even she said they wouldn't like your Jewish name, Tanya, you'd have to revert to your maiden name, Phillips. And I'm not prepared to diminish who I am or change who I am to please some country bumpkin. So there is that. And we kind of had to laugh about it, but anyway. Yes, so there is all of that. She also suggested that I get into improvised or impromptu comedy. She said some of your life stories are actually quite astonishing. You could turn them into comedy. I said, no, I'll send everybody into fucking therapy. A lot of them are that awful. But she said, no, you can put a twist on it. She said, even things you write about your debriefs with your psychiatrist are sometimes quite comical and funny. So that's true. I can be very funny. Dark, gravel-rashed, gallows humour. So there's lots to think about. She invited me to come and stay with her in Melbourne in her new home, and which is lovely. So I might just do that one day. And in the meantime, I'll continue on reading my stories on YouTube till I push myself off my own soul trap hell loop groove that goes round and round and round, keep attracting the same kind of scenarios, different faces, same outcomes, which I'm very distressed about actually. But it is what it is. Anyway, today we will be reading chapter 17 and chapter 18. So let us begin. Australia's most famous haunted house. They say that shadows of deceased ghosts do haunt the houses and the graves about of such whose life's lamp went untimely out, delighting still in their forsaken hosts. Joshua Sylvester, English poet, 1563 to 1618. What was it that made a woman faint with terror? A fearless youth run screaming across windswept paddocks on a bleak winter night. A child hysterical with fear. Two people fall down with fright. And an office bearer in the National Trust of Australia, unwilling to discuss her experience of unspeakable horrors. Was it one of the ghostly figures, or the blood-stained floorboards that no amount of scrubbing would clean, or the invisible icy hands that gripped the throats of unsuspecting victims who ventured into the building known as Australia's most haunted house? Bunjarraby was a stately homestead on a small rise overlooking the Great Western Highway at Eastern Creek, about 40 kilometres west of Sydney. It was a graceful, white, two-storey building surrounded by white flagstone verandas. An elegant cedar-panelled circular drawing room surmounted by a squat tower overlooked sweeping lawns. Wisteria and oleander bloomed in the gardens, and tall pine trees cast cool shade. Bunjarabi had been the hub of local society in its heyday, and the echoes of music and laughter, the rustle of crinolines and the flash of scarlet uniforms lingered in its quiet recesses and gilt mirrors. And yet all was not what it seemed. There was an all-pervading sense of sadness about the house that seemed to come from the bricks and mortar, as though the building itself was grieving for past sorrows, and a sinister feeling that caught innocent visitors unawares and sent shivers down their spines. Bunjarabi was built by Major John Campbell, who arrived in Sydney in 1821 with his wife Annabella and their 13 children. Holy hell. Campbell acquired a number of small properties in the Eastern Creek area and consolidated them into one large estate. For so numerous a family, Campbell also needed a large house. The site he chose was significant in local Aboriginal law. Some claimed it was sacred land and should not be profaned by the construction of a white man's humpy. It had also been the site of a great battle between warring tribes. All those dead are going to want attention. White men are so stupid. Why would you do that? Build a house on a graveyard, basically, a war zone. Anyway, the Aboriginals called it, I pronounced it wrong, babies, Bungaribi, meaning burial place of a great chief. That was the name Campbell adopted for his estate. An unusually large convict workforce was assigned to Major Campbell, and construction began on the house in 1824. Using bricks baked on the property. Don't know why, but my foot's itchy. Ouch. It's random, isn't it? By the gods. There's always something wrong with me. It's tiresome, actually. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of being sick. Anyway, it's not so bad. It's just another day in paradise. I can get off this hell loop somehow, if the gods will support me in that. Bring me good, kind people who have my back, my front and my sides and genuinely love me. I could do anything if that would just manifest. I have beautiful people in my life, my music scene when I go dancing, and a few very rare and precious friends, so it's not all bad, but I'm just saying, I just need never mind what I need and what I can actually get out of life are still far, far opposite ends of the spectrum, and I don't know why that is. Why the exact same repeat nightmare has manifested in my life. I don't know how that happened either. As my psychiatrist said, you went into it pure of heart and open-hearted and loving and transparent and kind and respectful and honouring of everyone Anyway, no point wallowing in my own hellscape. I'll just have to rise above it, ride through it, head high, shoulders back, and just keep moving forwards, people of Earth. A story that the bricks were imported as ship's ballast from England and hauled in hand carts drawn by pairs of female convicts all the way from Circular Quay was invented. However, there was more than usual unrest among the convicts at, let me say it again, Bungarebe. On at least 2 occasions they broke out and escaped en masse to the bush. A number died during the construction of the house, and at least one was murdered. Dear Goddess, that's not good, is it? A lot of agitation and unrest and anger happening on the land. It's the land itself is toxic. Campbell borrowed heavily to build his house and stock his estate, and was under constant pressure from his creditors, which would not have been good with 13 children, a wife, himself, and no doubt servants to feed and provide for. Stress must have been unimaginable. He sought aid from the Reverend Samuel Marsden, who declined to make him a gift of newly imported merino sheep, and from John MacArthur, a distant relative, who reluctantly advanced him £800 as a mortgage against the property. As the house was nearing completion in 1826, Annabella Campbell became ill and died. That on top of everything. Now he's got 13 kids to raise on his own. Oh, and the poor woman. She must have been exhausted. The last section of the house, the round drawing room and tower, were begun the following year, but brought Campbell little joy. He scratched his leg, the wound turned septic, and less than a year after the death of his wife, Major Campbell was laid to rest beside her in St John's Churchyard, Parramatta. I wonder what became of their children. Maybe the older ones were capable of looking after the younger ones. Bungarebe was put up for auction and bought by Thomas Isley, who began what became the long tradition of using the property as a horse stud. Some of the most successful racehorses of the period came from Isley's stables, but within 2 years he had departed, and a new owner, the prosperous Sydney butcher Charles Smith, was in residence. Smith was followed in quick succession by 4 more owners, including the ill-fated speculator Benjamin Boyd, the 7th owner in less than 20 years, which speaks a lot about the energy of a home when there's a lot of turnaround. Why, you might ask, did such an attractive, well-situated and commodious property change hands so often. True, there were droughts and floods and financial crises to plague owners, but there was also an ever-growing catalogue of personal tragedies surrounding the house that brought them anguish and sorrow. After the deaths of the convicts, then the Campbells, the house's next victim was an army officer who, legend has it, lost a duel, then shot himself in one of the small rooms in the round tower. When found, his body lay in an enormous pool of blood. In 1837, Charles Smith's brother Benjamin, a strong and healthy man, dropped dead near the gates of Bungarraby, and then the body of one Major Frederick Hovenden was discovered in the grounds. Hovenden had apparently been fleeing his creditors and sought refuge at Bungarraby. Beside his body lay his cap, and scratched on it were the words, "Died of hunger." It's chilling, isn't it? It's chilling. Such a beautiful day today. I'm just observing all the light reflecting off all the different trees, the foliages. It's all kind of sparkling. You know, my elderly friend Elsa, just a little bit of a segue. We used to do that. She was, when I got to know her, she was 90. I knew her for 3 years before she died. She would have been 91, but round about when she was 92 or 93, because she had a form of dementia, I would go there and she was not really verbal anymore. Like, she could still speak, but she wasn't able to really, communicate in cogent sentences or say more than just simple phrases. And so I would sit with her sometimes for hours, and she would just be staring up at the trees. And I knew, just getting old, and the time was creeping up on her when you become so detached from the world that you're just almost in another dimension. So I would sit with her, and like I did with my own mother many years prior, I would try and eke out her spirit, call her back out, Not that Elsa was as far gone as my mother was. She could still, recognise me and acknowledge me and understand that I was the neighbour from down the road, but it was actually kind of lovely because she would be staring at the tree in their garden, and then she would turn to me and she'd be like, "Can you see it?" And, "What's that?" she said. "The light shining through all the leaves and giving life to the tree." She said, "It's astonishing." And then I would look too, and I'd try to look with her elderly eyes that had seen many summers and many winters and many springs, many autumns. And I would try and imagine what it was to be her age looking at things, yet still seeing quite astonishingly with fresh eyes, always being ready to receive the information through our ocular nerve, with fresh eyes as if seeing it for the first time. and the joy and the delight and the peace she was feeling. It was beautiful, you know. The sun would come out and go, "What are you doing sitting there? You can't even talk with my mother anymore." I said, "Doesn't matter." I said, "We're talking in our own way." Old Elsa and I, side by side on our front porch, watching life unfurl so majestically. That's what it's all about, people of Earth. Small things. The small things that build up into a fabulous mosaic or tapestry and co-create a life. Having someone that loves you and is happy to be in your company, proud and happy. The old lady even used to say to me on occasion, "I'm proud of you." And I would nod. No one had ever been fucking proud of me in my entire life. But the old girl resonated with me on some level. Scottish ancestry too. So, you know, Vikings get each other. We see the world every day in every way with a sense of wonder and magic and awe and joy and delight, and we let it come to life right before our eyes and just observe the life force that is present in all things, but particularly in the trees when the light hits them a certain way. Anyway, let me carry on with the story. I'm a bit emotional today. I'm not quite sure why. Well, actually, no. No, that's a lie. I know exactly why I'm emotional. I know exactly why and what needs to be done, that I need to have the courage to do it and start a new life for myself somehow, because I'm alive and I've been dead too many times to give up the ghosts now, babies. One day I might even sit like old Elsa going, why am I here? Why am I still being tortured at this late phase of my life? She actually felt that. She thought being old was kind of a curse. So you see, we had the same darkness in us, the same traumas in us that can make life seem like suffering and a curse, when in reality it is also a gift and beautiful and powerful and magical when you have love in your life and you're seen and heard and witnessed, cherished, valued, protected, adored, as I adored that old girl and she me. We gifted each other that much. But at 94 her time had come and it is what it is. So make a good life for yourselves, people of Earth, no matter what your circumstances are. Allow goodness and kindness and peace and grace and sweetness with people who truly love you. Don't suffer anything less than that. Just wash it all off. Slough it the fuck off and bloom. From the 1860s onwards, the house entered a period of stability, at least as far as occupancy was concerned. But if the Cleve family, the Baldens and the Waters, remained longer than their predecessors, they did so at a great price. Strange events were beginning to happen, centred on the circular drawing room and its tower. There were 3 small rooms in the tower, reached by a circular staircase. In the room where the officer had shot himself, probably from PTSD, gets a lot of veterans, doesn't it? Probably will get me in the end, if truth be known. I know, but I'm real about these things. I've lived long enough to know to be real about these things. In the room where the officer had shot himself, the massive blood stain reappeared on the floor. Time and again, reluctant housemates were sent to the room with bucket and brush to clean the floor, but the stain simply reappeared the next day. I've heard of that happening in haunted homes, haunted spaces. What did Lady Macbeth say in that play? Out, out, damned spot. It's hard to scrub yourself clean of your own obfuscation of duty or lack of courage, lack of honour, your own ignominies, your own evils. Can't always get that shit clean, people of Earth. But you can wash off what didn't belong to you. Stand in your own integrity. Sometimes that's all you've got left. Holding your head high. Surviving. Jesus. Strange sounds, scratching, scraping and muffled screams could be heard in the tower, along with the sound of clanking chains at night. One family left their 17-year-old son in charge of the house while they went on a short trip. The lad was sturdy and game and decided to spend his first night alone in the house in one of the tower rooms. Around midnight, he awoke in panic. Powerful, cold, clammy hands were clasped around his neck, squeezing the breath from his body. The young man could see nothing, but fought his invisible assailant desperately. Eventually, he broke free, ran down the stairs and out of the house, screaming in terror, as you bloody well would. He did not stop running until he reached the centre of a large open paddock, where he was found the next morning by farm workers, cramped and shivering. Some years later, a boy of 5 was put to bed in one of the tower rooms. In the middle of the night, his parents were awoken by terrible screaming. When they rushed to their son, they found the little boy crouched on his pillow, hysterical with fear. His eyes were glassy, and he stared into an apparently empty corner. "Don't let him touch me," the child screamed. "Don't let him come near me." 2 women had similar experiences. One was grasped by the arm by cold, invisible fingers as she climbed the stairs, and the other felt frigid, clutching hands at her throat. The second collapsed and was found wrapped in a tablecloth, gibbering insensibly. Did the murderer's spirit hands belong to the officer who suicided in the tower, or to one of the other unfortunates who died at Bangaribie? At least two possible culprits were seen in ghostly form. Early last century, a young woman and her male companion attended one of the many fashionable balls held at Bangaribie. The circular drawing room was used for dancing and refreshments served in the next room. The young couple were the last to leave the drawing room when supper was announced. As they moved towards the door, the young woman drew her companion's attention to a strange woman dressed in white who was peering in through the French windows. The woman seemed to be crying, alternately rubbing her eyes and clawing at the glass with splayed fingers as if trying to gain entry to the room. The couple reacted as anyone would and moved towards the door, assuming the woman was in trouble, but then stopped in their tracks when they realised they could see the veranda posts through the figure. The young woman screamed and her companion shouted for help, but by the time the other guests returned to the tower room, the woman in white had vanished. In 1957, a letter appeared in the Sydney Morning Herald from a Mr. Sidney McKeon, who wrote, "Some 50 years ago, I was employed by Robert Boulden, who leased Bangaribie House and lands. The family had previously resided at Bangaribie, but had moved away because of ghostly manifestations in the house. Mrs. Boulden, a strict Christian, told me that night after night the family had seen an old man, or so he appeared to be by his bent body, in convict garb and wearing leg irons, slowly ascending the stairs to the tower room, where he would vanish. Again, when members of the family were returning home late at night, this same old lag would be sitting upon one of the gateposts. The horses would refuse to go through the gateway, and the family had to drive to another entrance. On other occasions, on arriving home late, the family saw the tower rooms, which were unoccupied, illuminated by a strange glow. When interviewed by a journalist at about the same time, Annie Forsyth Wyatt, Vice President of the National Trust of Australia, who lived near Bangaribie, admitted that she had seen the bloodstains in the tower and other unspeakable things that she could not bring herself to recount. Other visitors to the house were less reluctant to share their experiences. While wandering the grounds one hot summer night, a male guest from New Zealand claimed to have witnessed a ghostly reenactment of the murder of the convict. "I heard a scuffling sound and angry grunts coming from behind a large clump of pampas grass, and thinking it was a person or an animal in distress, I hurried over," he recalled. "To my amazement, I found two men there, one lying on the ground, the other with his knee on the prone man's chest. The second man held a brick in his hand, and as I watched, he struck the other man's forehead with the brick. I shouted, "Stop!" but neither figure seemed to hear me. The murderer raised the brick to strike again, so I reached out to grab his hand, and at the moment my hand should have come into contact with his, the whole ghastly spectacle simply vanished. I lost my balance at that point and fell to the ground, landing where the figures had been just a moment before. Dirt covered and deeply shocked, I returned to the house and told my host what I had seen. I tried to describe every detail, but felt at the time there was something I had forgotten. Weeks later, and hundreds of miles away, I remembered. Both men had been wearing heavy iron fetters and chains on their ankles. Another visitor to the house told of her terrifying encounter with the White Lady on the veranda outside the tower room. It was late afternoon, she said. I was sitting on the veranda, reading, when all of a sudden a cold wind swept over me. I shivered and, thinking it was just the evening coming on, decided to go indoors. As I rose from my chair, my book slid off my lap and fell onto the flagstones. I stooped down to pick it up, and while I was bent over, a pair of feet in white satin slippers suddenly appeared beside the book and just inches from my hand. I got such a surprise, I fell back onto the chair, and when I looked up, there was a tall, slender woman, dressed all in white, standing over me. She had a pleading expression on her face, and I could see tears rolling down her cheeks. I remember holding the book out in front of me like a shield and mumbling, "What do you want?" But no sound came from the figure. Instinctively, I knew she was not real, not a living person, and my fears were confirmed when her features started to melt like wax. Although the air was still, her white gown billowed out towards me, and I shrank back. Then she slowly faded away, and I started breathing again. Stories like these about Bangarabie were numerous, and when the building began to deteriorate with age and neglect, its derelict appearance added to its reputation. Around 1910, the land was subdivided and sold off as small farms. In 1926, a Mr. Charles Hopkins bought the house and spent a great deal of money restoring it. Among the unexpected finds during the restoration was what looked like a tomb covered by a large slab of stone in the garden. Excuse me. But even offers of extra pay could not induce Hopkins' workmen to open it. For a short period the house enjoyed a revival, but when Hopkins departed, it was left unoccupied. The roof leaked, the windows and doors swung open in the wind. Rats, snakes and pigeons took up residence in its mouldering rooms. The garden became overgrown, and the graceful sweeping carriageway disappeared under a sea of weeds. By the early 1950s, the once elegant house was in complete ruin. Thieves had removed anything of value, and vandals had smashed the rest. Most of the roof was gone, leaving the shell of the building wide open to the elements. In 1956, the Commonwealth Government bought what remained of the land as the site for the Overseas Telecommunications Commission's radio transmitting station. The facility required a wide belt of open land around the transmitter, and the decision was made to demolish what remained of the historic old house. If such a decision was made today, it would raise a storm of protest, but in the 1950s, the community was largely indifferent to issues of heritage and conservation. Those who knew the house and its reputation were probably glad to see it go. Fortunately, the man chosen to deliver the coup de grace to the 130-year-old building, a Rooty Hill builder named John Lawson, had a passionate interest in history. Lawson dismantled the ruins carefully, preserving many of the old building materials and meticulously recording the antique building methods. How lovely. Oh, let's make a wish, people of Earth. It's 1:11 p.m. I saw 1:11 a.m. this morning too. Angel sequences. It means there's a shift happening. May I merit something really good and really lovely and really soul nourishing and something quite wonderful. Why not? It doesn't have to always be negativity and ghastly horror and treachery, does it? To my beautiful ones. Lawson discovered that the round tower was supported by 2 hollow columns, which stood the full height of the building. Inside these were the bones of hundreds of possums who had fallen in and been unable to escape. Well, that's just awful. He attributed the scratching and screaming sounds heard in the tower to these animals and the bloodstains to the urine. He may have been right, but nothing Lawson turned up could explain the ghostly figures seen by so many people. The legends and stories persisted long after the building disappeared, and to this day, senior citizens of the district still speak with awe about old Bungarabee, Australia's most famous haunted house. Pardon me. Chapter 18. The Ghost of Mount Victoria Pass, and it's in the form of a rather long poem. So here we go, babies. You'd call the man a senseless fool, a blockhead or an ass. Who dare say he saw the ghost of Mount Victoria Pass? But I believe the ghost is there, for if my eyes are right, I saw it once upon a ne'er to be forgotten night. The lonely moon was over all, and she was shining well. At angles from the sandstone wall, the shifting moonbeams fell. In short, the shifting moonbeams beamed. The air was still as death, save when the listening silence seemed to speak beneath its breath. The tangled bushes were not stirred because there was no wind, but now and then I thought I heard a startling noise behind. Then Johnny Jones began to quake. His face was like the dead. "Don't look behind, for heaven's sake. The ghost is there," he said. He stared ahead, his eyes were fixed. He whipped the horses like mad. "You fool," I cried, "you're only mixed. A drop too much you've had. I'll never see a ghost, I swear, but I will find the cause." I turned to see if it was there, and sure enough, it was. From the ghost at the second bridge, Henry Lawson, Australian writer and poet, 1867 to 1922. The spectacular Blue Mountains of New South Wales have been a popular playground for holiday makers and day trippers for over a century, but their rugged beauty was not always appreciated. I went there in 2011 to visit Margaret. She used to live there. She said it's still a lovely place if I wanted to go somewhere to live that was, kind of rural, but it's she said I'd fit in well there actually, but a lot of artists and quirky types, but she said it snows in winter and it's very cold and I would struggle with that. So here I sit trapped in my Brisbane, Australia housecape, but anyway, I wouldn't be able to get a transfer to New South Wales anyway, so if I did decide to move from this house, which I don't think I would do now, it's just a knee-jerk reaction to grief, wanting to run and start new somewhere else. But if I were, I would have to. I can only get a transfer through the Department of Housing within Queensland, and they would downsize me to a one-bedroom, apartment, which would be like being in a prison. So I'm doomed to die in this house, I think, sooner or later. Whatever the gods decree, am I right? But anyway, Blue Mountains, I have been there and it's an absolutely beautiful place. To early colonists, the mountains formed a seemingly impenetrable barrier to the expansion of the settlement. Excuse me. Oh. And it was not until 1813, 25 years after the colony was founded, that a primitive road was hacked through the dense bush and rugged sandstone ridges, opening the Western Plains to acquisition and development. Convicts laboured and lost their lives building that road, moving thousands of tons of rock with picks and shovels, and constructing stone bridges as strong and dependable today as they were nearly 200 years ago. The steepest section of the road wound up and over Mount York, but the danger of accident was so great that an alternate route, only slightly less precipitous, was opened, and Victoria Pass, or Pass, I pronounce it Pass, came into being in 1832. Modern travellers speeding along the smooth black ribbon that is the Great Western Highway give little thought to the perils, physical and otherwise, that lurked at Victoria Pass. In earlier times, it was quite a feat to climb to the top and descend the other side without mishap or delay, and, if travelling at night, There was the added risk of encountering the ghost of Victoria Pass, which haunted the second bridge on the eastern side. Travellers reported that their horses would become restless as they approached the bridge. Then the ghostly and ghastly figure of a young woman would suddenly appear in front of them. As suddenly as she appeared, the spectre would then disappear, leaving witnesses anxious to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the scene of their harrowing experience. History can put a name to this ghost. She was born Caroline Jones, and at the time of her death, she was Mrs. William Collins. Carolyn came from a shady and unstable family. I know how that feels, baby girl. Fuck's sake. Sorry, I did see it, the notification. Her father ran a sly grog shop on the land where the old Woodford Academy now stands in the village of Woodford, and her drunken mother had hanged herself there. Despite this unsavoury background, Carolyn married into a respectable family, the Collitzes, proprietors of the inn at Hartley Vale. Unfortunately for Carolyn, the Collitz who took a fancy to her was the black sheep of the family, William, described by his father as a spendthrift idiot. William Collitz and Carolyn James were married in 1840, but their marriage was anything but blissful. Carolyn's younger sister was married to a thug named John Walsh, who was Carolyn's as well as her sister's lover before and after their marriage. Keep it in the family, am I right? Ooh. When her new husband turned out to be a poor substitute for Walsh, Carolyn left him and moved in with her accommodating sister and brother-in-law in a ménage à trois. 3 people in the relationship. Again, ooh, those are just my morals and my ethics on that. There was talk of reconciliation between Carolyn and William in the new year of 1842. They met along with Walsh. Gee, they really were enmeshed, weren't they? It's foul. Really foul. They met along with, why do I find that foul, that enmeshment? Had it in my own family. My mother had to have all the men circling around her with her psychopathic narcissism. It really was foul. Really was. Anyway, they met along with Walsh for a drink in Joseph Jagger's tavern near Hartley. But soon after leaving the tavern, Walsh attacked William. Carolyn came to her husband's aid by holding Walsh's arms and screaming to William to run for his life, which he unhesitatingly did. The next morning, she showed a bit of bloody loyalty and respect there, I guess. The next morning, a postman delivering mail came upon the battered body of Carolyn Collins beside the road on Victoria Pass. Her skull had been smashed with a large stone which lay, stained with her blood, nearby. John Walsh was arrested for her murder, but pleaded innocence, accusing not William Collins, as you might expect, but Joseph Jagger, the tavern keeper, of committing the crime. It's a bit odd, isn't it? The jury at Walsh's trial did not believe him. He was convicted and hanged. William Collins remarried 7 months after Carolyn's murder and lived a long and happy life. His family achieved posthumous fame in the 1930s when they and their inn became the subject, with much alteration of fact, of the first successful musical comedy entirely written and produced in Australia on an Australian subject, Collett's Inn, starring Gladys Moncrief and George Wallace. Needless to say, the Black Sheep's branch of the family and this gruesome episode do not figure in the plot. Poor Carolyn achieved fame of an entirely different kind, destined to spend an eternity of cold and windy nights haunting the bridge at Victoria Pass, spooking horses and terrifying travellers. There were numerous hair-raising accounts of encounters with her ghost, including this one from 2 youths driving a cart over the pass near midnight one night. The youths reported that as they approached the bridge, their horse became so skittish that one of them had to climb down and lead the animal. Every now and then there's like little typos in this, or extra vase put in, and then I have to quickly edit it with my own mind on the fly, people of Earth. Oh dear goddess. And I'm supposed to write my own book, and no doubt I'll have my own bloody mistakes that will grind my own bloody gears, so I'll just have to be conscious that nothing in life is ever perfect and it's okay to be flawed. Oh, sweet, isn't it? You kind of have to laugh though. The youths assumed it was a night bird or another animal that had spooked the horse, but as they drew closer to the bridge, they saw what the horse had already seen or sensed. A tall, slim, female figure dressed in a black gown of some shiny material that glowed darkly in the night, in the moonlight. See, I made a boo-boo there too. Oh, small violin. The figure was standing beside the stone parapet of the bridge, looking down into the gully below. The youths assumed it was a living person, and the one leading the horse called out, "You're out late, miss. Are you all right?" At first the figure seemed not to hear. Then it turned slowly towards the youths and their horse and cart, keeping its head tilted downwards and its features in shadow. When the figure moved, the horse stopped in its tracks, and no amount of encouragement or tugging would make it step onto the bridge. The youth sitting on the cart called out, "Would you mind stepping off the bridge for a moment, missus? It's our horse, you see. She's scared." The youth never finished his sentence. The words froze in his mouth as Carolyn's ghost raised its head to show its face and stared directly at the group. "I never seen nothing so bloody frightening before or since," he later said. "As soon as we saw her face, we knew she weren't human. Her eyes shone like a tiger's. There were sparks of fire in 'em and shooting out of 'em. She raised one arm high in the air, then t'other, and the air streamed out in the breeze like seaweed in shallows. Then the worst part happened. The thing's mouth slowly opened, and a soft moaning noise came from inside the black hole. It got louder and louder until it seemed like it was all around us and inside us. And it changed from a moan to a terrible howl. You know, they talk in the Bible about demons howling. Well, I reckon that's what that were, a demon howling. It sounded like no human or animal I ever heard. The terrifying sound was too much for the horse. Using today's vernacular, we might say it freaked out at that point and unable to turn around. It's one of my favourite words, actually. I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out, people of Earth. I'm freaking the freak out. The freak out has already happened. I'm stage 5 of the freak out. Then I return to equilibrium in the soft, calm, still waters. Be afraid, be very afraid. My calm can be more terrifying than my freak out. Just say, freak outs quickly pass, but the calm can last a long, long time before it erupts again. And it's not always a good thing. It's a kind of a zombie state, kind of a death state. So don't fucking ever do that to me. I've lived that way for too long to want to revert to that. I'll just enjoy my little freakouts instead. My little pressure valve releasing. It's better to express yourself than repress yourself. Madonna said it best, babies. But look what she's done to her face and body. By the gods. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. You can't hide from old age and death. It comes to us all eventually, people of Earth. So own your own face and your own personality and your own being with pride and dignity and aplomb. Just saying. Anyway, if I ended up a ghost, I'd be the most terrifying fucking ghost that ever existed too. They'd mistake me for a demon too. Tempting thought at times. Fuck them, my enemies. They weren't even of any kind of high calibre, just low-grade scum. All of them, including those from my family of origin. But I've survived so far. I've survived them all. Using today's vernacular, we might say it freaked out at that point and, unable to turn around, reared in the shafts of the cart. The youth on the driver's seat had to hang on for dear life as the animal bolted, carrying the cart with it. The other youth grabbed the tailboard as it passed and clambered aboard. Horse, cart and passengers careered under That should say careened. They've written careered. I think they meant careened. I'm going to correct it because it doesn't make cogent sense the other way around. Horse, cart and passengers careened across the bridge, over the ghost, through it or under it, and on down the road for several hundred metres before the youth in the driver's seat managed to bring the horse under control. What in the hell was that? One youth asked the other. I dunno, but I hope I never see it again. It ain't following us, is it? His companion asked. The first youth mustered his courage, turned and looked back. It's still there, on the bridge, he reported. Go, mate, just go, he shouted, his voice quaking. The youth on the driver's seat flicked the reins and the horse picked up speed again. They didn't stop till they reached their hometown, Blackheath, 5 kilometres further down the range, horse and humans all lathered in sweat. Some comfort from her tormented afterlife may have come to Carolyn in the 1880s when Henry Lawson came to live on the nearby village of Mount Victoria. Good in Mount Victoria in Wellington, where I come from too. Very pretty it is. The young poet wrote a 16-verse poem about her entitled The Ghost at the Second Bridge, quoted in part at the beginning of the story and reminiscent of the youth's experiences. The poem gave Carolyn a permanent place in Australian literature, but it was small recompense for the ills done to her in life. Some say that Carolyn Collins put a curse on the village of Mount Victoria, but its current prosperity belies that. No one has seen the ghost of Victoria Pass for many years, which is hardly surprising. The road has been upgraded and widened so many times that the old bridges are barely visible. And if Carolyn was still inclined to put in an appearance on the roadside at night, dressed from head to toe in black, it's doubtful if the occupants of the cars hurtling by would even notice her. Right, people of Earth. That's my 2 chapters a day. I could actually possibly go on and read 4, but I'm a bit tired, people of Earth. I'm on heavy antibiotics. I'm still recovering. And so no, we'll stick to the 2 chapters a day thing, I think. Or if I feel like it later, I might come back later and gift you some more wonderful stories from Richard Davis. Now, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to read 2 more chapters because I've just seen, it's one of my favourite lines, the ghost and the machine, meaning anomalies in our 3D reality matrix. I've lived through that a lot on a constant repeating hell loop as well, being trapped almost like a living ghost, a zombie in the machinery of other people's perversions and inversions. So I'm going to continue. I'll read 2 more chapters right now. Let's go, babies. Just going to get a drink of water though, because I am feeling a bit dry in the throat, and I might come back with something yummy to eat too. My beautiful friend Margaret, who visited me yesterday afternoon and evening, brought me Alpha Liqueur plums from a factory in Melbourne, so delicious. I might have 1 or 2 of those. Treat myself a little bit while I'm reading you ghost stories. So I'll be back. Just going to get some water and I'll be back. Oh, I love how my bones all crack when I get up. Oh, this fabulousness is killing me, bones. Right, I'm back with lychees. I actually bought these to offer to Margaret with our dessert and bloody forgot about them. It's awful, isn't it? They were meant to be a nice treat for my friend. My terrible friend, people of Earth, forget things. Anyway, I think she enjoyed the strudel that I got for us, though. She really did enjoy that. Four chapters today. That's my goal. 4 chapters. What else have I got to do with my life? Could be out on a beach somewhere with a beautiful man by my side, swimming amongst the sharks. Oh, shouldn't joke about that. A beautiful young girl, 17, got killed by sharks the other day at Bribie Island. Christ on a bike. I was thinking about driving up to Alex Surf Club tomorrow. Ramjet got a gig on at 4 p.m, so I'd have to leave by 2. And or even a little bit early and go for a swim before up there. But it's a long drive on my own, and then I thought about the fucking sharks. Honestly, living in perpetual fear, but having to do things on my own all the time. I'm getting tired of that. So I'm at the stage now. I'm just going to stay home and get old gracefully and slowly rot for my own hell loop. What do you reckon? Just accept that I'm, been pushing myself too hard to no avail. It's costing me a lot of money and I'm going nowhere, people of Earth. It's the same fucking groove I've been on for 14 fucking years. Excuse my French, but grinds my gears after a while. This one. A lot of them were souping and leaking, but this one's perfect. Do you want to watch me eat chocolate prunes? Yum. These used to be my mother-in-law's favourite chocolate. Whenever my then husband used to fly over to Melbourne to see his brother or whatever reason he was coming here for, he would go to the factory and buy seconds, but like in bulk, big packets, and bring it back for her. And after we got married, he would bring it back for me as well. Oh my God. We used to make this game. This is a nice memory of him. Credit where it's due. I don't like to think about him at all because he was an asshole, but there were a few nice things he did. Otherwise you wouldn't stay there that long if you weren't getting some nice things out of the relationship. Jesus, it's so awful. Humans are just so awful, fake and superficial and treacherous. But anyway, he would buy a 2 kilo thing of these chocolates, and he'd make a game of it and hide them around the house. And I'm a chocoholic, but I'm also psychic, and I can't explain how I would find them, but I could almost like have this like spidey senses radar for where they were hidden, probably picking up on his own thoughts that he thought he had one up on me and he'd hidden the chocolates from me. And I'd be like, very likely also PMSing, so I'd crave chocolate more at those times. And I'd be like, where's the chocolate, Michael? Oh, you'll never find it. And he'd giggle, It was kind of sweet in a way, being playful and childlike. I'll give him that, And I'd be like, I know where it is. You can't possibly know where it is, Tanya. I've hidden it well. And then I would just walk around our little townhouse, 3-bedroom duplex. New Zealand, they're called townhouses. And I'd be like, beep, 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 beep. And I'd be like, am I getting warmer? And go, you're cold, you're cold. And because the more he said I was getting cold, I knew the closer I was to it, because he'd try and throw me off. And I'd 9 times out of 10 would find them. And he'd be like, I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you did that. And I'm like, I'm psychic, Michael. You're dealing with a real witch. Don't underestimate me. Anyway, it was funny. One time, though, I didn't find them. I must have been off my game or not very well or angry or didn't give a fuck or something. But he was like, I can't believe you didn't find the Alpha Liqueur plums this time. I was like, well, why don't you just give them to me like a normal person? Stop torturing me with every little fucking thing. And he was like, I thought we were having fun all this time. I said, you were having fun. I was having to work for every little thing. So there is that. But also, it was good of him in a way to hide them from me, because I have no impulse control when it comes to chocolate. I would sit there and devour the lot in one sitting. It was like bad, very, very bad. I once went to a local GP he was a locum actually. I said to him, I have a problem, doctor. I was about 20. It's between babies actually. 20 or 21. I had Crystal when I was 20 and a half. Anyway, I said, I've got a problem, doctor. He said, what's that? I said, I'm addicted to chocolate. I said, I'm getting really fat and I've got no impulse control. I can't control it. I said, is that the worst thing that could happen to you actually, Tanya? I went, it's going to give me diabetes. It's going to kill me one day. He went, no, it's a whole food. It's got theobromine in it. You're craving the love hormone, looking at me meaningfully. I think he'd figured out I wasn't all that happily married. There wasn't much love in that fucking marriage, to be honest. It's probably why I'm still stuck in a hell loop to this day, some kind of fucking curse. Anyway, won't think about that or I'll cry. So anyway, he's looking at me, this very nice doctor, not much older than myself at the time. Nice man, decent man, honouring man. You find them occasionally. They're always married to someone else. But anyway, he says to me, theobromine's good for you. Chocolate's good for you. There's worse addictions. He said, you're not on drugs. You don't smoke. You don't overly indulge in alcohol. I think you're doing just fine, Tanya Aarons. Thank you, doctor, I said. I walked out of there feeling healthy and validated and cared for and respected and even a little bit loved in a, therapeutic way. Nothing sus, people of earth. So, I can't remember the last time I had lychees. It's been a while. But they're a bit cold. Alpha Liqueur plums. and lychees. Not bad for a woman on a fucking disability pension. But Margaret bought the liqueur plums for me. Thank you, Margaret. I love you. Don't see you very often. I don't communicate all that often. We've known each other for 50 years. I met her when I was 9. So, one day when I get my shit together, Margaret, I'll come and see you in Melbourne. I can't promise when that will be. I still want to go home to New Zealand, see my childhood friend Lynn Robertson. That hasn't happened either. All I've got to look forward to in this house is my own imminent fucking death. How imminent? I don't know. Just holding, like the Vitruvian woman, everything at bay. Dancing my wild dance and striving to be happy no matter what, no matter who. Right, I'm on a chocolate and lychee high now. Let's carry on with the story, babies. Chapter 19. The Ghost in the Machine. As a former zombie, I know how that goes, babies. There are 2 gates of sleep, one of which it is held is made of horn, and by it easy egress is given to real ghosts. The other, shining, fashioned of gleaming white ivory, but the shades send deceptive visions that way to the light. Virgil, Roman poet, 70 BC to 19 BC. He was 49, is that right? 41. No, that's not right. What's 70 minus 20 is 50. Oh no, I'm right. 49. Well, people didn't live long in the old days. I keep saying that, don't I? But then there's people who live very, very, very long, but still manage to keep their childlike qualities, like my beautiful Elsa. Oh, she was beautiful. It's twice I've mentioned her. I'm going to hear from her son and daughter-in-law soon. I bet you anything. Might even happen in the next hour. Get a call. It'll be Robin. What are you doing, Tanya? Telling stories about Elsa. Robin picked up on the vibes. I'm like that. I pick up on people's vibes. But they sometimes pick up on mine. Right. Here we go. Most doctors, like other practitioners of the sciences, are skeptical about things supernatural. An exception is, thankfully my psychiatrist isn't. Thankfully, we're on the same page, and so he understands a lot of my experiences. He actually understands are not me being crazy, but real experiences. Otherwise, I would have been in a whole level of hell if I had a doctor who was an unbeliever. To you, Brian, being a real human who gets me. An exception is Dr. Chloe Hill, and no, that's not the good doctor's real name. As her remarkable story unfolds, you will understand why a pseudonym had to be used to preserve her anonymity and her reputation. Chloe is currently doing her internship at a Sydney public hospital, and hopes to set up in private practice in a year or two. But her story begins when she was still a student in the autumn of 2010. The School of Medicine Chloe attended offered dissection of human cadavers as an elective component in the medical degree course, and Chloe, like most of her fellow students, opted for it, believing that exposure to a real body would be more beneficial than studying plastic models or computerized images. See that there's my ignorance there. I thought all doctors had to actually dissect real bodies. Could explain why a lot of our surgeons are lacking in skills. Don't know how to cut a cyst out of my daughter's back and cut through her muscle and rendered her incapacitated, the motherfuckers. If you're going to cut into people, you need to know how each muscle and tendon, how long it is, how wide it is, how deep it is. How are you going to find that out from a plastic model? Jesus. Explains a lot, doesn't it? Anyway, had my little rant, and on we go. The cadaver allotted to Chloe to work on was that of a middle-aged man who had bequeathed his body to medical science. The man was overweight and had succumbed to a massive heart attack, so the external parts of his body were untouched, but large flaps of fatty tissue had to be divided and clamped back before Chloe could begin work on his internal organs. Chloe worked quickly and deftly, all the while trying not to let her gaze wander onto the cadaver's face. A short, thick, grey-streaked beard that looked more like steel wool than human hair framed the lower part of the face in sharp contrast to the upper part, which was hairless, no eyelashes, no eyebrows, and a smooth, shiny scalp. I wonder what happened to his eyelashes and eyebrows. It's a bit odd, isn't it? This curious arrangement made the cadaver's head look as if it was attached to its body, upside down. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. That might have struck your average medical student as comical, but a twisted mouth and tiny pig-like eyes gave the face a sinister cast, as though cruelty in life somehow lingered on in death. After removing all the cadaver's abdominal organs and laying them out on stainless steel trays, Chloe reached for her laptop and began making detailed notes of her observations. Apart from the cadaver's face, which continued to trouble her, Chloe found the whole exercise exhilarating and engrossing. The professor of anatomy who was supervising came by and questioned Chloe about the condition of the cadaver's heart, praising the acute observations she had made about it. Time passed quickly, and in what seemed much less than the 4 hours, the clock on the wall of the dissecting room indicated Chloe was removing her surgical gown and mask and cleaning herself up in the scrubbing room. That evening, Chloe's boyfriend Reese took her to a Thai restaurant for dinner. During the meal, Chloe regaled Reese with all the details of her morning's anatomical adventure. Now, Reese was not a medical student. He was studying architecture. But he knew Chloe well and appreciated how passionate she was about medicine. He put up with all the gory details, while he tried to enjoy his roast duck and red curry sauce, and his jasmine-scented custard. Well, that sounds delicious. But when it came to responses, the most he could manage was an occasional unconvincing wow or a half-hearted terrific. Reese was a patient and trusted friend, and although neither he nor Chloe knew it then, those qualities were about to be tested. A week later, Chloe discovered she had a minor problem with her laptop. A tiny spot of bright light, no bigger than a pinhead, appeared in the centre of the screen. Chloe thought nothing of it the first time the spot appeared, reminding herself that the machine was getting old. If the spot didn't go away, Chloe decided she would drop her laptop off at the local computer repair shop to have it checked, then thought no more about it. Chloe had noticed the spot of light on a Friday. I'm just getting cold here now, people. We've finally got cold in this room. Now it's too cold. Whew. Sorry. Chloe had noticed the spot of light on a Friday and did not switch her computer on again until the following Monday morning. When she did, the spot was still there, and she fancied it was a little brighter than she remembered. It was annoying, but nothing more. That night, when she checked her emails, the spot was definitely brighter and also a little larger. And to her surprise, Chloe found that it remained on the screen after she switched the laptop off. Thinking, I always joke that there's a dibbook in this computer. I've had weird anomalies happen with this laptop too. It's a bit odd sometimes. Very frustrating too. You want something to work properly. But never mind. Thinking there must be some leakage of power from the battery, Chloe made the decision to call into the repair shop the next day. Before she left home the next morning, Chloe checked that the spot was still there, and it was, but when she reached the computer repair shop and opened the laptop to show the technician, the spot was gone. Probably just a glitch in the wiring that's fixed itself, the technician said. When Chloe reached home, she opened the laptop again, and the spot was back, glowing brighter than ever in the centre of the empty black screen. It also appeared to be larger again, as if it was growing a little in size each time Chloe looked at it. It was now about the size of a match head, and large enough for Chloe to discern that it was not round, but oval and slightly elongated, like an egg lying on its side. I was able to buy eggs for the first time yesterday in Aldi. It's been 3 months I haven't been able to get eggs. Just mildly annoying because I couldn't make pancakes or we went to make a cake, couldn't do that. So, the bird flu insanity is obviously over, but they'll find something else. Instead of that, they were lacking in long life lactose-free milk, which is odd. They're playing psyop games in the supermarkets, what I'm saying, holding certain products back to freak people out with. That's my theory and I'm sticking to it. Chloe had a lecture that day and she took her laptop into the lecture theatre, but it would be fair to say that she did not hear most of the talk. When she opened the laptop, the elongated glowing shape was now about 2 centimetres long, which is about that. And Chloe found herself absorbed in trying to work out whether the shape had any recognisable form. As the lecture came to an end and Chloe closed the laptop, she concluded it did not, and that the thoughts of planets, glowworms, and jellyfish that had flashed through her mind were all fanciful. Reese came around that evening and Chloe told him about the annoying fault in her laptop. "Give us a look," suggested Reese. When Chloe lifted the lid of the laptop, she gasped. The glowing spot was now about 4 centimetres in length and 1 centimetre in height, and its shape instantly triggered an alarming memory. Reese was mystified when his girlfriend slammed the lid down and announced firmly, "No, I don't want to look at it anymore. Let's go and get a coffee." Reese sensed Chloe's distress and over 2 cappuccinos tried to reassure her with, "Don't let it get to you, love. It's only a machine." Only. But Chloe knew that sitting on her coffee table in the lounge room of her flat was something much more than a few circuit boards, a collection of wires, and a plastic case. Later that evening, after Reese had gone home, Chloe summoned up the courage to open the laptop. The glowing shape had grown larger again, and Chloe could now make out the shape of the cadaver she had dissected 10 days earlier, laying in profile on its dissecting table, half covered by a grey cloth, as she had first seen it. My God, I would freak the fuck out if that happened to me. There was no mistaking the shape. The cadaver's body rose like a smooth mound in the centre. Its feet stuck up at one end, and its bald, bearded head made another bump at the other end. Chloe stared at the image in disbelief and with fear rising inside her. Again she slammed the laptop closed. Before she went to bed, she locked it away in a drawer. That's a bit similar to a kind of a ghost or demon mentioned in North American Indian law. It's called a manatee, and it kind of haunts you. It's very fucking scary indeed. Don't know what made me connect to that though, but I think I am right. It's a similar kind of phenomenon. For the next 2 days, Chloe could not bring herself to unlock the drawer, but the longer she delayed, the more morbidly curious she became. Finally, near lunchtime on the 3rd day, when bright sunlight was streaming into her flat, and the noise of birds, cars and people going about their business in the street drifted in through the windows, she unlocked the drawer and carefully took out the laptop. Chloe placed it in the centre of her kitchen table and gingerly opened it. A second later she began to tremble uncontrollably. The ghost of the cadaver, for that was most assuredly what had entered Chloe's computer, was now quite clear and filling about 1/3 of the screen. Its head was turned towards her, the face carrying a hideous scowl, and those pig-like eyes wide open and staring back at Chloe. Now, most of us might have smashed the laptop at that point or taken it somewhere and burned it, but Chloe lacked the resolve to do either. She locked the laptop away again and tried to forget its existence. But curiosity inevitably got the better of her. The next time she looked, the ghost had grown again in size and had raised itself up on one elbow. Its free hand was extended towards Chloe, and those awful eyes were still staring directly at her. A week later, when she looked again, she found the ghost had begun to rise from its table and now had the grey sheet secured around its belly. It was a modest ghost, give him credit where it's due. The head and the hand were halfway across the black void between ghost and victim and reaching out towards her. A day later, it was closer again, almost filling the screen, and Chloe could see the individual hairs on the ghost's chin, its bloodshot eyes, and the blackened fingernails on its outstretched hand. On what would prove to be the last time Chloe looked at her ghostly tormentor, it was so close its face alone filled the screen. Chloe realised that the ghost's next step would be to leave the screen and to materialise in front of her. The whole experience had been terrifying, but that prospect did not bear thinking about. Chloe slammed the lid, grabbed the computer and ran from her flat. With the computer held firmly under her right arm, she ran the 2 kilometres that separates her flat from Reese's. People stared as Chloe careered along quiet suburban footpaths. Careered or careened? Two individuals asked if she was okay as she rushed by, but Chloe didn't stop to reply. All the while she was praying that Reese would be home when he reached his flat. He was, and responded immediately to Chloe's pounding on his front door. "What's wrong, babe?" he asked. "You look awful." Chloe was panting, and between gasps for breath, she asked Reese if he could get his car out and drive her somewhere. "Anywhere," he said. 5 minutes later, Reese, Chloe and the laptop were speeding along Oxford Street, then Old South Head Road, heading for the Gap. "Why are we going to the Gap?" Reese asked. He was growing increasingly concerned about Chloe's state of mind and her insistence that they drive to Sydney's most notorious spot for suicides alarmed him. Chloe had thrown the laptop onto the back seat of Reese's car. She now pointed over her shoulder to it. "We're going to get rid of that thing," she explained, and a shiver coursed through her body when she spoke the final word. "I want to see it smash into a million pieces and be swallowed up by the sea. She doesn't understand that a ghost that's in the machine's not going to be destroyed by her smashing up the laptop. His energy can go anywhere he damn well likes. Maybe into her new laptop too. Or in a car. I've had hauntings in my car in the day, my old car. You know, if you're gonna deal with the paranormal, you've got to expect that they can find you anywhere. Sometimes even jump into people you love and trust, turn them fucking demonic, have them try to kill you. It's happened a few times too. Oh well, the first one wasn't anyone close to me, but paid by my ex-husband, but the other two were men that were supposed to, if not love me, at least have some care towards me, since they were former lovers. But oh well, shit happens, eh? But something wants you, and it's destructive and evil, can find you anywhere. But the same can be saying for something really wants to love and protect you and have honour towards you, and it's supernatural. Those beautiful, benevolent angels, ancestors that love us, and or fae, can also find us anywhere, yin and yang people of earth. I know who I'd rather be surrounded by, light beings of good, sweetness and kindness. Having lived both extremes, now I just want the middle path. Look neither left, look neither right, not too much of either, because consequences, people, consequences. Even Lucifer, the most beautiful angel of all, appears as a light being, someone that garners your trust and your love and your passion, and then when you least suspect it, turns rancid, often right in front of your eyes, to my own astonishment. Lived that 1,000 times in this incarnation. Nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing. The disappointment and the grief and the horror is almost insurmountable at this point in time, people of Earth. I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in end times per se, but as I said to my friend Margaret, I'm living it. I'm seeing it daily. It's something I don't actually believe in and subscribe to. I'm living. There's no denying it anymore. I'm living it. And I'm not sure how much longer I can sustain or survive it, quite frankly. Certainly can't on my own. You can't survive that on your own. So there's not many alternatives left to me, people of Earth. That's all I've got to say about that. But to be fearless and courageous, document everything, and wait for my exit stage left from this hellscape of epic proportions that I was warned about in my last near death in 2019. 6 years, not quite 6 years later, it'll be 6 years in June. Astonishing. Just astonishing. Reese concluded that he must trust Chloe and pressed her no further, concentrating on his driving and fulfilling Chloe's insistent pleas to go faster. As I said, that was a fool's errand. Not going to get rid of him that way, babies. Nothing short of a full-blown exorcism will get rid of that one. He probably felt, the soul still hovering around the body, that she was, in some way, or maybe he just hated women when he was alive, one can never tell. But he must have in some way felt dishonoured or disrespected as she carved into his flesh for her medical training, her studies. He must have, you need to talk to the bodies as if they're alive, because sometimes the spirit is still hovering. You need to show respect. I'm sorry I have to do this to you, but I'm learning to be a doctor, and, I promise I mean no disrespect. You've gifted your body to science, and this is what has to happen. Fucking communicate. Even with the dead, show respect and honour. Just saying. It may have just been something evil and demonic, but he may have also suffered a lot in life, hence the obesity and the heart attack. Just wanted to be of use to something, so gave his body to medical science, and I don't know, somewhere along the way he got fucking angry. Ghosts do that sometimes. Get angry about all the things they were denied in this life and the next and the next. Love. Love is the law, people of earth. Love. Some things are unlovable, like pedophiles and serial killers, but basic courtesy and respect, open communication, explaining your intentions sometimes, will avoid a litany of horrors. Mama T has spoken. Filthy, treacherous men who used to fuck me and then had the audacity to put their hands on my throat while demeaning and debasing me with their other lovers. That idiot eventually married, are now trapped in a permanent dimension, wanting my forgiveness. Fool. You don't get to destroy a woman who'd already suffered immensely by the time you met her when I was 33 and get away with it. Yes, did you see how my laptop did a little flash just there? He knows. He knows. And all entities that he rides upon with his filthy Israeli Scottish dubook, be on notice. You will suffer the same fate if you dare try to destroy me also. I came in wholeheartedly and sweetly with only good, loving intentions. You want to twist that into something ugly? It's your ugliness, not mine. Le door va door, from generation to generation, your progeny shall suffer the consequences of your ugliness. Can we say, zombie, zombie, zombie? The gods vomited me back to life over and over again, even against my own will at times, so I could have true love, peace, comfort and ease, if not absolute prosperity, because I'm not greedy people. Just want comfort and ease. The loving man by my side, and our families, and our friends, and our community or tribe. That's what I've been staying alive for all this time. The vague hope that the gods might bring me the right person each and every time. Wow. Wow. Ellipse. To be continued. I doubt there's a man born that can actually be decent and honouring of me. Still, at almost 60, it is what it is, people of Earth. The car screeched to a halt in the car park in Military Road at the Gap, and Chloe reached into the back for the laptop, but it had shifted along the seat during the journey and she couldn't reach it. Reese reached over and took hold of it. "Don't open it," screamed Chloe, and Reese assured her he would not. Reese carried the laptop once the couple had abandoned the car, leaving the doors open. They raced along the cliff-top paths towards the highest point, startling lazy lizards sunning on rocks and making gulls squawk indignantly and take flight. Finally, they stopped at the railing of an observation ledge, both breathless and wind-blown. Mama-T. What are we going to do with the Mama-T? There's nothing can be done, people. 30 years of therapy, me standing like Vitruvian woman between dimensions, holding my own, most of the time alone. Fuck. Dead pets, dead loves, dead everything. But Elsa reminds me, look at the light in the trees, rejoice in what is, and be grateful for the love that still surrounds me, even if I can't hold it precious and it can't be with me. It's out there somewhere, someone kind and courageous and honouring of my body, mind, spirit, soul, heart. It's out there somewhere, even if it's only with the gods. Hopefully they'll reclaim me soon. Can't fucking go on like this, people of Earth. It's too much ghastly horror, and I didn't deserve any of that. Again, didn't deserve it. Just saying. sending fucking female rapists now, as if the males aren't enough to contend with. For the love of all the gods. Stretching as far as the eye could see was the vast blue Pacific Ocean. To their left rose picturesque North Head across the entrance to Sydney Harbour, and to the right the spectacular coastline stretched away towards Bondi Beach. 100 metres below them, at the foot of a perpendicular cliff, the sea boiled and roared as it crashed into jagged rocks. Chloe took the laptop from Reese. She held it in both hands, raised her arms above her head, and hurled it out into the windy void beyond the railing. Reese and Chloe clung to the railing so tight their knuckles turned white as they watched the laptop falling and tumbling over and over as distance made it grow smaller and smaller. That would have happened, by the way, kind of in slow motion because they were that traumatised. That would be on a repeat loop, that memory in their minds, forever. Ask me how I know. Finally, it struck a jagged rock at the base of the cliff and shattered into a million pieces. A huge foam-capped wave rolled over the rock and swept away what remained of the laptop and, Chloe hoped, its ghostly occupant. At that moment, a sound that resembled an immense sigh resounded through the jagged rifts in the cliff and swept up and over the two tiny figures on the cliff top. A combination of wind, waves, the cries of seabirds, and perhaps another element that had once been human. One day, if you are unlucky enough to need the services of the accident and emergency department of the hospital where Chloe is now an intern, you may encounter her, but you will be unlikely to realise it is she, as she tends to you with calm professionalism and gentle skills. And that's exactly how Chloe would like it to remain. Goddess bless Chloe. You were lucky he left you alone and didn't attach to you even after you destroyed the laptop. Just saying. Chapter 20. Ball, chain and whip. Do I believe in ghosts? No. But I am afraid of them. Marquise du Deffand, French aristocrat, 1697 to 1780. Australia was colonised by the British to provide a dumping ground for murderers, thieves, rapists and rebels. But if the villains who arrived in chains were an unsavoury lot, those put in charge of them were often not much better. The power drunkenness of such men, liberally spiced with sadism and bestiality, created monsters, and their convict charges were easy prey. Not surprisingly, many a brutal overseer or superintendent of convicts met a sticky end, and their enraged ghosts refused to depart, still seeking retribution 200 or so years later. One particularly nasty example is said to reside at Hyde Park Barracks in Macquarie Street, Sydney, once home to 900 convicts and arguably Sydney's most haunted building. Reports of the ghosts of emaciated convicts in convict garb, female figures in filmy white robes, clanking chains, ghostly footsteps, and strange lights have been reported from this building for the past 60 years. But the phenomenon that upsets witnesses most is the ghost of a former superintendent. This evil spectre materializes in the doorway of what was once his office, and all agree he is not a pretty sight, and the sounds he makes are far from pretty. I was leaving the building one night at about 6 o'clock when I remembered that I had not switched a photocopier off, one former employee recalls. Only the security lights were on, but because it was summer, there was plenty of soft light coming in through the windows. I was walking back to the office when I heard a noise behind me. Dear goddess, I can tell I'm getting tired. I'm fading, people of Earth. Fading. I turned thinking another colleague was working back or a security guard was on his rounds, but what I saw stopped me in my tracks and made me scream, the first and only time I have ever screamed involuntarily in my life. In a pool of bluish light like a spotlight stood a giant of a man dressed in old-fashioned clothes, a greasy white shirt with a red bandana knotted around the neck, tight black pants, heavy boots, and a maroon jacket. He had a large belly that hung over the top of his pants, and tufts of wiry grey hair poked through gaps in his shirt front. He was completely bald, and his face was red and veiny with bulbous lips and bulging eyes. He was leering at me, and I could see spittle dribbling from his mouth. I knew without doubt that I was face to face with a ghost. It seemed solid, but parts of it were fuzzy and moved in and out of focus. I held my briefcase up in front of me and yelled, "Leave me alone!" Then I backed away, and the thing followed me. Then it spoke, and I can still hear its gruff voice and its hollow-sounding tone as clearly as if I'd heard it yesterday. "Hello, my dear," the spectre said. "You come to keep me company?" "No," I shouted back. The creature's expression changed. What had been half a smile turned into an evil scowl. "Ain't I good enough for you, you stinking whore? You'll feel me fist if you don't give me a kiss." At that point, I ran. I didn't look behind me to see if the thing was following, but I could see it shouting abuse at me. Never in my life have I heard such awful language. I didn't stop running until I reached St. James's Church across the road. I don't know what led me there. Shock, fear, a cry for God's help? Who knows? I pushed on one of the old doors and it swung open. I stumbled into the church and slumped down on the nearest pew. I sat in that peaceful, comforting house of God for almost an hour until I had calmed down enough to go home. And you know, after that, I never stayed in the barracks alone, day or night. A few years ago, an organisation called the Centre for Metaphysical Studies conducted a survey of supernatural events at the barracks, and members of that group reported being confronted by the same nasty spectre and also being given one of its foul-mouthed tongue lashings. Just how this obnoxious spectre came to meet his death is unclear. Witnesses have never commented on any life-threatening injuries visible on his face or figure, but visible and horrible they most certainly are on the one in our next story, another convict keeper whose haunt lies about 50 kilometres west of Macquarie Street. The old Great Western Road between Parramatta and Penrith is rich in ghost stories. According to an article in the Nepean Times, ghosts would sit upon the top rail of the fences that lined the road like swallows on a telegraph wire, and the most ghoulish of them all was to be found at Quarry Hill, near where the University of Western Sydney now stands. Quarry Hill gets its name for the obvious reason. There was once a quarry there where hundreds of convicts toiled and many died, gouging thousands of tons of stone from the hillside with picks, shovels and bare hands to pave the roads of an expanding colony. The gruesome saga of this ghost begins at the quarry face in the winter of 1838. A young convict, unfit for such hard labour, collapsed one day, and the overseer had him carried a short distance away. The young man regained consciousness to find his face pressed against the rough bark of a gum tree, his shirt ripped down and coarse ropes binding him to the tree trunk. By turning his head slightly, he could see the fate that awaited him. The overseer was limbering up his right arm, and in his hand he gripped a vicious-looking cat-o'-nine tails. The first lash drove the breath from the young convict into searing pain, the like of which he had never experienced before, shot through his whole body. 50 hard lashes were rained down on him, and by the time the overseer desisted, there was little white flesh left on the young man's back. The swooning and delirious convict was carried to a local infirmary where rum was poured on his wounds and later salt rubbed into them to aid healing, which would have hurt like fuck, people of Earth. After a month of excruciating and unremitting pain, a surgeon pronounced him fit to return to work at the quarry. The convict's back which had been soft and white, was now tough like leather, and so was his resolve to avenge himself on the overseer. He waited 2 days for the right moment. While the overseer's attention was diverted, he crept up behind him, raised his pick and swung it with every ounce of strength he could muster. The overseer never knew what hit him. The sharp point of the pick entered his head at the base of the skull and ended up poking out of his forehead. The convict paid for his moment of sweet revenge with his own life. He probably deemed it worth it. He would have realised that would have been the only outcome of that. Strung up by the neck, then buried in an unmarked grave. But it was not his ghost that was soon being reported by travellers on the Great Western Road. It was the overseer's, and a more terrible sight, witnesses said, could hardly be imagined. The ghost appeared near the entrance to the quarry, sometimes by moonlight, sometimes in lightning flashes on stormy nights. It was covered from head to toe in fine dust. In its hand it carried the blood-soaked pick that had taken its life, and from a huge cavity in the ghost's forehead, rivulets of dark blood streamed over its face, neck, and chest. Coachmen cracked their whips and raced their horses past the spot, while mothers covered their children's eyes and closed their own for fear of seeing the grisly sight. Travellers on foot prepared themselves with tots of rum and ran as fast as their legs could carry them to the next inn. Plenty saw the ghost, and many who did not, including those who closed their eyes, imagined they did. Stories of the ghost of Quarry Hill persisted for 50 years and more. One night in 1880, an employee from Fleurs, a large estate near today's St Mary's, was sent to Penrith to fetch a doctor. When the man approached Quarry Hill, his horse took fright and his dog began to howl. Only by blindfolding and leading the horse and carrying the trembling dog was the man able to pass. Well into the last century, old-timers still spoke in whispers about the Quarry Hill ghost, and travellers, unaware of the stories, commented on the unaccountable feeling of dread that overtook them on that stretch of the busy road. It is impossible to put names to either the ghost at Hyde Park Barracks or the one at Quarry Hill, but a third colleague of theirs is the most famous of the many ghosts who haunt the picturesque village of Richmond in Tasmania, and he can be named. A few biographical details about him also survive. George Grover was convicted of stealing at Winchester in the south of England in 1825 and transported to Tasmania, where he served 7 years before obtaining the post of flagellator, official flogger, at Richmond. When repairs were required to the stone bridge spanning the Coal River alongside the village. Grover was also put in charge of the convict workforce. Chained convicts quarried large blocks of stone at nearby Butcher's Hill, then carried them in handcarts to the bridge. The stout and sadistic flagellator rode on top, cracking his whip like an ancient Egyptian slave driver and inflicting as much pain and misery as he could on his long-suffering charges. Grover's reign of terror came to an end one foggy day in March 1832, when he fell, or was pushed, off Richmond Bridge. One version of the event has the convicts turning on him and beating him to death with their manacled fists before hurling him off the bridge. But a report in the Hobart Town Courier says he fell, or was pushed from the bridge parapet, where he had lain himself down while drunk. Someone wrote in large, bold lettering across his convict record, "Murdered March 1832, as if to say, thank goodness." There have been claims ever since that whenever a heavy fog envelops Richmond, Grover's angry ghost can be seen stalking the bridge, searching for his killers and lusting for revenge. Some claim to have seen him trying to clamber up the slimy sides of the bridge from the rocks 9 metres below. One witness, a mild-mannered young curate who was a stranger to the district and knew nothing about Grover or his ghost, had to be hospitalised after his encounter with the spectre. The curate was crossing the bridge one evening when he heard a strange scratching sound and cries for help coming from under the bridge. The curate was short-sighted, and when he peered over the parapet on the northern side of the bridge, all he could see was mist swirling over the surface of the river. Then, when he turned to check the other side, a pair of large, hairy hands suddenly appeared, gripping the parapet. Thinking someone was clinging on for life, the young curate rushed forwards. Below the hands was a pair of brawny wrists, and these the curate grabbed in his own slim white hands. "Hang on," the curate said, "I will try to pull you up." The curate was not a strong man, and he doubted he had the strength to be a good Samaritan, but he was determined to give it his best shot. He prayed for divine assistance, took a deep breath, then tugged. To his amazement, the figure offered no resistance. It rose quite effortlessly. In less than a second, the figure's face was level with the curate's, but it was not a normal face, anything but. The curate later described it as the face of a demon from hell, living yet not living. The eyes were alive and fixed on the curate with an evil, mocking gaze. The rest of the body was a bloody mass of whiskers and battered flesh. The curate let go of the spectre's wrists and ran for his life. He looked back just once, and the spectre was still there, floating beside the parapet. Pardon me. And from its bruised and broken lips came a cackle of demonic laughter. The curate ran to a house at the end of the bridge and pounded on the door before collapsing on the doorstep. Later, he was admitted to a hospital in Hobart, and it was many weeks before he recovered his senses. Oh, the poor man, he was a sensitive soul and had a nervous breakdown. Well, that would be enough to tip someone over the edge, I guess. Richmond Bridge is not the only place in the village that Grover's unsightly spectre is said to appear. A figure believed to be him has also put in occasional appearance in the flogging yard at Richmond Jail, where he plied his bloody trade as flagellator. One small boy who visited the jail with his grandmother a few years ago became visibly distressed when they entered the flogging yard. When asked what the matter was, the child pointed at an empty space and announced the horrible man with the bloody face that only he could see and who was terrifying him. George Grover and his two nasty colleagues in New South Wales all began life at the bottom of the social ladder, and none climbed up it very far. But our fourth and final convict keeper came of more distinguished stock. Captain Patrick Logan, Commandant of the penal settlement at Moreton Bay, Brisbane, from 1825 to 1830, could trace his ancestors back to the time of the Crusades. He was a distinguished soldier, a capable administrator, and a far-sighted visionary. Unfortunately, he was also ruthless and just as merciless to his charges as the others. Captain Logan's cruelty earned him the title the Fell Tyrant. Fell is an old-fashioned adjective meaning terrible, fierce, and destructive, and made him the subject of one of Australia's best-known folk songs, Moreton Bay, which describes the horrific plight of convicts under his rule. Misconduct earned them up to 300 lashes, and many died strapped to the flogging frame. Logan was feared and despised by the convicts, and the final verse of Moreton Bay rejoices at his violent death. The captain was also a courageous explorer who made many journeys, sometimes alone, into the interior, surveying and mapping the wild terrain. It was while returning from one of these excursions, riding alone along a bush track in what is now South Brisbane, that Logan met a ghost. The captain spotted a man in convict uniform a few yards in front of him, and, thinking it was an escapee from the settlement, hailed him and ordered him to stop. Logan expected the figure to run, but to his surprise, it approached him, reached out a sinewy arm and grabbed one of his stirrups. Logan's horse took fright and reared. The captain lashed out with his riding crop, but the blow passed straight through the shadowy figure. He spurred his horse to a gallop, but the ghost clung on, floating effortlessly beside the terrified horse and rider. It was not until they were nearing the south bank of the Brisbane River that the ghost suddenly let go and disappeared. Logan's fear may seem out of character for a ruthless man with an inquiring mind, but something else had unsettled him. Captain Logan had recognised the ghost. It was a convict called Stimson, who had absconded, been recaptured at the very spot where he appeared, and died while being flogged on the captain's orders exactly 1 month earlier. Revenge is sweet, isn't it, babies? Even for some ghosts. Logan met his own death on another expedition. He set out with his batman and 5 trusted convicts on 9th of November 1830 to map a creek west of the outpost at Limestone Hills, Ipswich. The party was stalked for most of its journey and attacked twice by hostile Aborigines, but despite this apparent danger, Logan went off on his own on 17 October, planning to rejoin the party at a rendezvous at dusk. When he found he could not reach the spot before nightfall, Logan built a rough shelter and settled down for the night. In the early hours of the morning of the 18th, he was attacked and killed by Aborigines, or, according to some historians, by convicts. At noon that day, a party of prisoners working on the riverbank at the Moreton Bay settlement spotted Captain Logan on horseback on the far side of the river, waving to them. None had any doubts about who it was. 2 of them downed tools and hastily launched the punt that was used to ferry people across the river and rowed over to pick up their commandant. When they arrived on the south bank, the spot where Stimson's ghost had disappeared and the Queensland Performing Arts Complex now stands, there was no sign of Logan. That's interesting. QPAC. He and his horse had vanished into thin air. At that time, the fell tyrant's battered body was growing cold in a shallow grave in the bush 70 kilometres inland. Right, people of Earth, thus concludes those 4 chapters. Yes. Chapter 17 to chapter 20. Right, I have to make a note of that when I publish this video. Have a beautiful afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the space-time continuum. people of Earth. It's 3:04 p.m. on the 8th of February 2025, my former mother, dead mother's birthday. She hasn't misbehaved today, so that's good, but I kind of had a haunting when I went to Redlands Hospital a couple of days ago because of the old records. They said, "Do you live at 19 Jellicoe Street?" which freaked me out. And then they asked if my next of kin was still Gisela, pronounced correctly, which is rare. Most people, when they read it, mispronounce it. So she made her little presence known in her weird way through administrative assistant. Odd. But I'm okay, you know. She's been dead. It'll be 15 years on the 7th of March, and that entity that was my own mother can't hurt me anymore. There's other entities that have been able to wreak a lot more harm than even she could have dreamed of in the ensuing 15 years, so there is that. But anyway, life goes on, people of Earth, and I'm continually choosing life and choosing to live with dignity and aplomb and grace and whatever joy and delight and happiness I can muster, with harm to none and competition with none. So it is done. Blessed be. Have a beautiful day wherever you are. Bye for now. From Sacred Space at Titania's Realm.